Tony Coving and I did a recording that's out there on the podcast and YouTube, talking some about what this book is meant to him, and his I think get hold of son's 9 or 10, and his grade school started teaching 7 Habits for Kids, and he and I talked some more about it, and his wife, and it's just a huge, big deal. What that is. I read the book for the first time over a couple of year period back in 91, 92, and 93, during that period. And then we've also had 2 other podcast YouTube recordings where some of us have talked about this book, just in general. I did purchase. Did anybody else buy the 30th anniversary edition?
No.
What's interesting, it's got 70 pages of overview and something called Inside Out that I have not read, and a couple of introductions to the book. It's great reading. We're not going to go over that right now. If anybody would like to discuss that, and just let me know. We'll do a couple of us, 3 or 4 of us, just to talk about some of those. There's some great points in those first 70 pages. So we can do something separate on that if you'd like. My intent is that we will go through at least 1 habit a week to finish this, no more than 6 weeks. Maybe finish it in 4, and we'll just see. Tony's not on right now. He's in one of our mortgage realtor training calls right now. I think he's going to be on when that is over with. Guys, this is a book that some of you heard me say this before, heard it in Tom, Ray, many times. But this is the book that if you're not real familiar with, even some parts of it, if you are familiar with it, you have to set aside your own beliefs. You've got to set aside what you some preconceived ideas. So this is a book that will fly in the face of that. It's the sign of an educated person that can entertain somebody else's ideas and their beliefs without having to own them. So again, not having to own them, to engage in a conversation about what the author says doesn't mean that you agree. So what we'd like to do as much as we can is stick to what Dr. Covey, and I'm going to refer to him as Dr. Covey, which he was. And then there's 2 other Coveys in this book mentioned and edited in the forward. One is Sean Covey, or Stephen M.R. Covey. He's Dr. Covey's oldest son. And then in the new edition, Sean Covey did the update, did the editing on this one for the family and the publisher. So let's jump into habit number 1, whatever page that might be, since we're all probably on a different version. I've got one version that's over here. It's the original 1989 version, and it is a little bit different. So if we can, hold on a second, I'm trying to get my screen. There's my screen set up right. So being proactive, and he calls it the principles of personal vision. On page, on the first page of that, again, I'm on page 74, and I'll pull out the other version so we can try to keep up with this as we go. I bought the new book, I bought it paper, I've got it digital, and I'm listening to it. So I'm really merging myself in this. This is not a book that I plan to be part of my growth journey this year. I try to pick those books out around the first of the year, and Tom and Herdy, some of us last Tuesday got together on at this time and talked about what books And I really didn't realize until going through this book this week that this is an important book that I need to go back through again. A lot of it I practice, I think, but I love what he says here, the principles of personal vision on that first page. He says, as you read this book, try to stand apart from yourself. Try to protect your consciousness upward into a corner of the room and see yourself in your mind's eye reading. You know, that goes to what I was saying there about set aside your some of your beliefs. Really, you know what? One of maybe the most important thing here for us is not so much about what Covey is saying and we're talking about today, but how it makes you think. If you're going to take notes of anything, maybe just take notes of what you think. Earl Nightingale said, 60, 70 years ago, he said, thoughts and ideas are like slippery fish. Unless you gaff them with the tip of a pencil, they'll swim away into the deep blue. So write down, you like that, don't you, Ernie? Yeah. So to write down how this book makes you think. It goes on to say in that first page, we are not our feelings, we are not our moods, we are not even our thoughts. The very fact that we can think about these things separates us from them and from the animal world. Jump over a couple of pages, and we've been talking about Viktor Frankl, and it's in italics in my book. In the midst of the most degrading circumstances imaginable, Frankl used the human endowment of self-awareness to discover a fundamental principle about the nature of man. And then the italics is between stimulus and response. Man has the freedom to choose. Yeah, Herdy.
I was thinking, Danny, that probably the hardest thing we all have is we get super busy with everything going on in our life, right? Time we get up, time we go to bed. I can't speak for everybody here but myself, but I would say it's real hard to look inward on a constant basis. And when we don't do that, I guess it catches up with us till we have to, right? So part of that being proactive, would be self-inward evaluation on a constant basis, which quite frankly, I don't get around to as much as I need to. That's kind of what woke me up in this first chapter when I was reading my notes from when we talked about this before. So hope that starts the conversation.
Yeah. And Ernie, I thought of you as a fairly
thank you.
A fairly good contemplative type person. You typically think about what you're contemplating. There's a book called "Switch on Your Brain" by Dr. Caroline Lee, and you were talking. I thought about what she says. It's that she tells you that you need to set up pauses during the day, and some pre-planned pauses. And I've got one calendar that just for that type of stuff. And during that pause, you take a 10-second pause to think about how you're feeling, and then choose how you're feeling, how you want to be feeling. So think, feel, choose. And it's a good pause.
And you've all remember in our past when we've had these discussions, one of the things you brought up, and I can't remember which book it was. I don't know if it was John Maxwell's book, was part of life is awareness, right? That we have to constantly be aware of in a 360 what's going around on us, right? What's going on inside of us, what's going outside of us. You've always stated awareness as being a very part of being proactive, correct?
Yeah, and we've got to you got to be careful. I mean, when he wrote this book in '89, and I haven't compared some of the topics and what Sean might have edited in here. So I'm looking forward to see what he does say. And I'll probably hear it on the Audible first. But he's in '89. We didn't have the internet that was available to all of us. Okay.
Yeah. No.
I 2 years before that bought my first computer, and it cost me $6,000. Okay. And it wasn't hooked up to the internet. And so a lot of things have changed. And now we've got so much stuff coming at us that we've got other things competing for our thoughts that are causing us to have so many repetitive thoughts every day, every week, every month. It's just building on it. And it's what's the thing about the levels of awareness? The first one is what you're unaware that you're unaware of. Then you become unaware of what you become aware of your unawareness. So you need to work through that. This whole thing here, about the Viktor Frankl, I've read through it a couple times and listened to it once. And his book, As a Man Thinketh, I think that's his book, but yeah, As a Man Thinketh, it's an incredible book that's of what he did. And he was a psychiatrist in June, and at the prison camp, the rest of his family was killed. He ended up going to Austria maybe after the war, and was a practicing psychiatrist. Died in his 70s or 80s. So he was in his 40s during the war. So maybe we jump over my page 78. There's a bold subchapter title called Proactivity Defined. And I don't mean to jump across anything that anybody wants to delve into. But proactivity defined. In discovering the basic principle of the nature of man, Frankl described an accurate self-map from which he began to develop the first and most basic habit of a highly effective person in any environment, the habit of proactivity.
Out in front.
Get out in front.
Anticipate.
What's that, Ray?
Anticipate.
Anticipate? Yeah, good. Tom?
Situational awareness.
Situational awareness. Very good. I'm going to take this opportunity to go back to something Jim Collins said in the 25th anniversary edition of the book. He had the opportunity to sit down with Jim Collins wrote the book, Good to Great, another classic. And Collins asked Coving, how did you come up with the idea in the 7 Habits? Covey responded, I didn't. Covey says, what do you mean? You wrote the book. Covey comes back and says, yes, I wrote the book, but the principles were known long before me. They were more like natural laws. All I did was put them together to synthesize them for the people. And Collins goes on to say, that's when I began to understand why this work has had such an impact. Covey had spent more than 3 decades studying, practicing, teaching, and refining what he ultimately distilled into these pages. He did not seek credit for the principles. He sought to teach the principles, to make them accessible. He saw creating the 7 habits not primarily as a means to his own success, but as an act of service. So then being proactive and proactivity defined, he says, look at the word responsibility. And he breaks it, he hyphenates it. Response hyphen ability, the ability to choose your response. Highly proactive people recognize that responsibility. They do not blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for their behavior. Their behavior is a product of their own conscious choice based on values rather than a product of their conditioning based on feelings. Moves on, he talks about becoming reactive. Reactive people are often affected by their physical environment. If the weather is good, they feel good. If it isn't, it affects their attitude and their performance. Proactive people can carry their own weather with them. Whether it rains or shines makes no difference. Reactive people are also affected by their social environment, the social weather. When people treat them well, they feel well. When people don't, they become defensive or proactive. And I've got this underlined: the ability to subordinate an impulse to a value is the essence of a proactive person. Proactive people are driven by values. They're carefully thought about, selected, and internalized values. Proactive people are still influenced by external stimuli, whether physical, social, or psychological, but the response to it is a value-based choice or response. You know, a couple of good stories about some family. He goes on to talk about the Viktor Frankl some more. Planning. Planning your week out. I do mine typically on a Sunday evening. Early evening, late afternoon, early evening. I purposely, I like to take a nap. Then I get up. I will I'll go for a walk and take a shower. Like this time of year, I'll take a shower as soon as I get out of bed, and then go for a walk. Come back and I come up to my office, look at the week, see what I've got on the schedule, and just put together some form of plan for the week. It's never the right plan. And let me tell you, if any of you ever do a plan and it goes exactly as you planned it, I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to be your friend anymore. Okay, because you're too perfect for me. And but still, I mean, a plan is never right. Plans always fail. And I won't get off into that right now. But to me, when I miss that process, or if something's going on that I need to move it to later in the evening, or even get up earlier than I get up on Monday mornings, so I've got a plan. I've got my printouts here at my desk, and of each day for the week, and I've got it all in there. It just it helps center me a little bit, and I'm being it just sets me up that I'm being proactive. Listening to our language. Go over a couple pages. I'll read through that for a couple minutes. That read through, if you haven't got to it yet, go ahead and jump to the conversation where he's having about the student that asked him, will you excuse me from a class? I have to go on a tennis court. Then in my book, the reactive language versus proactive language is right above that. I look at that, and I look at that reactive language as being kind of a victim thinker. Anybody else? Reactive language is nothing I can do. That's just the way I am. It makes me so mad. They won't allow that. I have to do that. I can't. I must. If only.
So, Danny, back in the days when I used to teach recovery, the biggest excuse in the group was, that's who I am. I can't change. I am who I am. People really do buy into the lie that they that's who I am. I can't change. I can't tell you how many times I hear that from folks. Of course, I don't react to it, but sometimes I think we just say because it's in the front of our brain. It just comes out, right? But it is a hard habit for a lot of folks to break. They just really don't believe that they've been taught somewhere, somehow, that who I am means I can't grow. I'm trying to put this into words. It's really difficult. But they all that I am who I am. It doesn't work. Sorry. That's not an excuse to not move forward, right? Stuck people say that all the time, all the time.
Yeah, it's there's a term that's been kind of a new term that's come out in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
That and that.
So it's Terry. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, hi Terry. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Terry.
I'm sorry, I had to switch back and forth between computers. This one has no picture. The other one, I couldn't hear what you guys were saying. So
Oh, sorry.
eventually I'll get it together. But it's really funny. I pulled my old book over, and what is stunning to me about being proactive is how broad it actually is.
Yeah.
When you start thinking about being proactive, you're thinking about just making a list, but the broadness of it is really interesting. More recently myself, as a way to get out from under anxiety, I have taken on the languaging of staying in the process as a way of being proactive versus saying, oh my gosh, this bad thing is going to happen, or the business is going to collapse, or whatever it is. I have had to pull back and listen to my own language and say, you know what? I've been telling myself there's really no evidence of failure, number one. And number two, so if something bad happens, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah, that's very good.
Just gotta
Terry.
figure it out. It's
That's
the next thing to figure out.
that's a great point. I was just thinking of going back to the old days of self-talk, right? When we start putting making the molehill into a mountain, we say stop, and then we go, okay, what's really going on here? What's really happening? That self-awareness stuff, Terry, that's good. You just brought back some thoughts that I hadn't thought of in a long time. Good stuff. Yeah, thank you. Good stuff.
That word neuroplasticity. One of the first guys to start talking about that I noticed was a man named Helmstetter. His last name. He wrote a book. First book my wife ever saw me buy 37 years ago. Some of you heard me tell those before. Said the name of the book is "What You Say When You Talk to Yourself," and it's that what you're talking about, that self-talk. You maybe also think about a book. I heard you asked me maybe think about the book, Chris Thurman's book. A couple of us have been through. I think you and I and somebody else went through it 3 or 4 years ago. The lies we believe.
Yeah, Minnis Meyer guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And a big part of that is the self-talk. I mean, it's huge. Sometimes it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. But Zig Ziglar used to quote, and I forget who the institution was that did the study, but that only 5%, 5, 6, 7% of what people worry about actually comes to play. So, and then like you said, Terry, then if it does, we'll figure it out. This part here on my page 87, this is before he gets into the circles of concern, the circle of influence, where he starts talking about love. And got a few things underlined there. Jump over to the circle of concern, circle of influence. Terry, along the lines of what you were saying, another excellent way to become more self-aware regarding our own degree of proactivity. I love what you said, Terry, about the broadness of it. You're right. Just I hadn't thought about it. I haven't used that word yet until now, but the broadness of being proactive. Another excellent way to become more self-aware regarding our own degree of proactivity is to look at where we focus our time and energy. We each have a range of concerns: our health, children, problems at work, national debt, nuclear war. Oh my goodness. Think about that. Some of us on here, we can remember the nuclear war, the Cold War, the threats of it, and oh my goodness. I mean, I knew people that were building fallout shelter in the backyard. Come find out, like I remember my wife, looking at my wife's grandmother's fallout shelter. That of course was just in the late 80s that I saw it, but it wasn't a fallout shelter. I mean, it wouldn't have protected them at all. But if people were building all across the United States, and in the war, I mean,
they were in every building, a public building.
Yeah, they were.
Signs.
Yeah.
Y2K. Think about Y2K, the worry that you spent on Y2K. Ray, you were in the tech business back then, weren't you?
So was I. Yep.
Yeah. Was that a big deal, Ray?
Yes.
Yeah, they were scared to death about the rolling over and the reset of all the date timers. It was they made it a fiasco, and I guess not many computers had that much trouble, but they did a lot of work to verify it to prevent the downtime.
Yeah, I remember waking up that morning, and I already had a phone call from my IT manager. At the time I had about, I think I had about 60, 70 employees, and Randy was retired military. I've been in the military for 30 years, and he was over the top on some things. And I already had, when I got up about 5:30, 6 o'clock, I already had a voicemail from him. He had turned out he had stayed at the office. You couldn't remote in, back then. He stayed at the office to watch it happen, or boot up computers and server at 12:01. He left me the message: "Hey, everything's fine. It's working. I'll be in late this morning." By determining which of these two circles is the focus of most of our time and energy, we can discover much about the degree of proactivity in the circle of concern or the circle of influence.
This is another thing that is a good reminder all the time is that I try to treat my energy as if it's money and spend it the same way. Because there's so many things, especially now, television, the media, the social media, that is engaging us with anger, actually. And we have to be very protective of our energy and our focus. And so it's kind of a good reminder that there's only so much that I can, in fact, influence.
Yeah, good point. I focus on managing my energy within my calendar. I don't know if that makes sense or not. And I don't have a really good reference point on that, though I have read about it. It's either there's uh, uh, there's a couple of guys I've read last year a lot about time, and as I'm getting Rayner and Oz Guinness and then another guy of mine, it slips it right now. But somebody talked about that they manage their energy and not their time. Try to get a grip on that. So I just say I manage my energy within my time. And yeah, that's there's things I need to do in the mornings. I'd rather do in the afternoon, but I need to do it in the morning because I have more energy.
Hey, Danny, I was going to say, I think I don't have the lesson in front of me, but I think I kind of envision being proactive as staying in the present too. If we get caught up too much in what happened yesterday and what's going to happen tomorrow, we tend to get way ahead of ourselves in the present too, which it's sometimes hard to live in the present, right? We've got a lot going on out in front of us.
I'll leave it up to Kathy, my wife, to let me know what's going on. But what do I need to know about? And so, and I'll regularly ask her, "Hey, did I hear something such and such?" And she'll go, "Yeah, it doesn't matter. You don't want it, so okay." But Terry, you said something about anger. Did you say something about anger and it was stuff to hear?
Oh yeah. Through all of this this past year, with all the political turbulence that we witness every day, and the division and all that, from a neuropsych standpoint, it's easier to engage people when they're angry, and so
Yeah,
and that's how we get hooked. Happiness doesn't hook us quite as quickly and fiercely as anger does.
true. That's
And
true.
so, and this is just the phenomena that we're witnessing in media in general. So you have to be very protective of what you allow yourself to look at, and that's part of the energy management.
That's good.
Back in the day, shortly after 9/11, probably like yourselves, I had to travel a lot via jet. And in fact, I was in a jet that took off at the same time as the folks that took off, So I was in the air and landed at the same time as the people that were involved in 9/11. So that was real nice. But after that, I was terrified. And I read a book called Fearless by a security specialist. And one of the things that he said was, don't watch the news.
That was 20 years ago. Yeah.
Read your news. Read it. Read your news instead of watching the news, because the languaging that's used is insightful. And now we see it's probably tenfold what it used to be.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I want y'all to think about something. I'm going to take let me try this. I was thinking about this the other day, and I'd seen part of this, the guy demonstrated, but not all of it. But think about if you had think about this in relationship to the stuff that we take in purposely, this the stuff that we take in totally. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. Some of it, maybe what's the difference? Okay. But let me off of that for a minute. I don't watch any news. I've got an email that comes in that I read highlights. See if I want to, read any of that. Rarely watch any video of it. I just, skim it. If my wife sends me something, I'll listen. I might watch or listen to that, or read it. Sports radio. I used to not be a Tom Brady fan for some reason, but what that man did inside the sports world, and he retired, I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. And so, last week I went online to different sports podcasts and some, trying to find out more about what people, they're making me mad. I'm not much of a cusser these days. I was cussing, getting off of it, just going, oh my God. It was just, just the criticism, they lift him up about something, then another guy would nail him about it. They're just jibber jabber that, get people hooked into what you were saying there, Terry. VC, kind of what you and I were talking about the other day, and just to get people to just get the hook in, to get the hook in, to keep watching and keep listening to it. But I think about all of that in the way of, just think about the fact that if you had let's say I had a jar here of clear liquid, I had another jar of Coca-Cola, or the thickest coffee you can imagine. And that that coffee or Coke is from all the stuff that we take in. You like this, Tom? All the stuff that's where we are right now. Let's say where you are right now. Don't know everybody's age, but whatever age you are, I'm 67, and what's inside of my subconscious that works 10,000 times faster than my conscious. No matter what I want to do consciously, I've got to change my subconscious to have different actions, to have different results. And so I've got this picture, this clear picture of me, of my brain, my consciousness today, and it's that thick, dark coffee. What my dad used, how my dad used to drink. You could stand a spoon up in it. He'd make a big pot of coffee in the mornings, unplug it, and just drink it all day. Okay, or he'd plug it back in and kind of reheat it every once in a while. Think about that. That's how you are right now, or some version of that. Most of us are. But then you take this other pitcher of clear water and you start pouring that in. By the time you pour that whole pitcher in, it's watered down. It's a brownish color. You might be able to see a little bit of light through it. Then you get another pitcher and you keep pouring, so eventually you've cleared out all the brown stuff. But that's not what life is about. So I'd seen that. I was thinking about this on a run the other day. Life is like that. We're trying to bring more the good stuff in, but we have the world of YouTube and Facebook and podcasts and different things that while we're pouring good stuff in, the world is pouring in more brown than what we're pouring into clear. So we're not getting watered down that much. And different studies say, we've heard it before, but in 1901, the amount of data that a person took in a lifetime, the average person gets that much data they absorb in 1 month in 2021. And that's why that we have to be so protective of what we're taking in through our five senses. So anyway, way off track there, but I think it feeds, for me, it feeds into that pressing in about circle of influence, the circle of influence pressing out there in that one circle against the circle of concern versus the circle of concern pressing in on the circle of influence. Goes to Zig Ziglar saying that we're going to do the same 5 years from now, right? Go ahead, Terry. You going to say something? So he says, expanding the circle of influence. It is inspiring to realize that in choosing our response to circumstance, we powerfully affect our circumstance. Let's say that again. It is inspiring to realize that in choosing our response to circumstance, it is inspiring to realize that in choosing our response to circumstances, we powerfully affect our circumstances. When we change one part of the chemical formula, we change the nature of the results. Over on page 95, the bottom, these are people who interpret proactive. There are people who interpret proactive to mean pushy, aggressive, or insensitive, but that isn't the case at all. Proactive people aren't pushy. They're smart, value-driven. They read reality and they know what's needed. Then he gives an example of Gandhi there. Then he talks about the haves and the bees, making and keeping commitments. Yeah, and is this where he talks about, but think about commitments that you make to yourself. Think about how, you lie to yourself when you say you're going to get up at 6:30 and you don't get up to even 6:35. You just lied to yourself. You lied to yourself when you say you're going to meet for lunch at 11:30 and you show up late. You're lying to yourself, other people, but you're lying to yourself. Thank you, Terry. I'm glad you joined us. We're here every Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to jump off. Thank you
Okay.
so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it being here.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So, making and keeping promises. Then he has it here what he calls a 30-day test. Application suggestions. For a full day, listen to your language and to the language of the people around you. How often do you use and hear reactive phrases such as "if only," "I can't," or "have to"? Then he asked us to try the 30-day test here. So I'll put this on the Facebook group, and if anybody wants to comment on it, and trying the 30-day test of productivity, be aware of the change in your circle of influence. I'm going to try it, and I'll post about it. Any comments, any feedback anybody wants to give me or add in to if you do it. So then now here, Sean Covey in this book has added new insights on that. What I'll do over the next week also is add some highlights of this into the into Facebook post. He said, many years ago, my dad asked me how work was going. I began listing my complaints. It's so hard to juggle so much. The office politics are terrible. I'm totally burning out. My long commute is killing me. And on and on and on. I was hoping for a little sympathy. And instead, Dad looked at me disappointed and said, geez, Sean, that doesn't sound like you. Why are you being such a victim? Organize your time so you're not so busy. Don't get your head into office politics. If you don't like your long commute, then move. And he then walked away. I was taken back, but suddenly realized he's absolutely right. I am being a victim. How did this happen? Stop it right now. How can you use this in the next week? Anybody?
Well, I guess for me, I can't control events, and it's all about control, that concern versus influence. But I can certainly build influential people around me and connect myself with them. And later this week, I got coffee. I have coffee once a month with Jeff Baker over at Citizens National Bank. And he's the kind of guy you want to hang out with because he does his job right. He's Christian. He tells like it is. Yes, no, I don't know. And even he tells people, no, I can't help you. He goes and finds them a bank that will. Okay, I don't know anyone else doing that. And it's just remarkable. And he doesn't take baloney. He's not going to change his values. And if he has to change his values, then they can fire him. He found a bank that let him do all that. So he can like be himself, use all the skills. So that's a person of influence I want to be around, because he also impacts others just in his whole thing. About I sent someone over there and he said, no, I can't help you. They came back and said, how you like Jeff? Great. He told us no, but I love him. I mean, you know, you don't see that very often. So that's an example where I can keep building that. And, you know, I network to find resources, but it's also that influence because people, I mean, you know, meeting Brian Henson by luck at Christian Business Leaders. Well, that wasn't luck, that was God. There's some big things going on there. So yeah. I can work on that circle of influence where I can.
Yeah, that's good. You know, you know, I don't remember this in the previous book. I want to look back at it, but those two circles were the circle of influence. You know, you got the arrows pressing out against the circle of concern, or the circle of concern presses in on the circle of influence. Which one are you? You know, I'm going to reread this, and I think I just skimmed it. There's so much vintage of it. It just, which one are you focusing on? And which one are you giving the most energy? Yeah. Actually, he says here, big bold letters, and you see that positive energy enlarges the circle of influence. Negative energy reduces the circle of influence. I guess, you know, hurting back from your counseling, helping people through recovery days, it's not so much about stopping something, it's what you're adding in its place. Is that right?
Yeah, because transference just basically put one thing to another and didn't really, it was like putting a Band-Aid on a wound, right? Change had to be something proactive, using the word proactive from today's deal, had to be an inside out deal. A person had to be willing to dig deep and find out first, what's the cause? What am I powerless over? You know, the first thing was powerful because if they weren't powerless over their issues, then they didn't have a chance to heal because they always believed they could control it. And you can't. So you're right. So, you know, it's changing the whole person from the inside and out. And that's hard work, you know, but the biblical verse in the Beatitudes is those who hunger and thirst for righteousness' sake. That's the real effort. That's the righteous effort.
Yeah, well, that goes to those notes I sent you the other day on out of the renovation of the heart.
Right.
I want to schedule that time with you to talk into, but it's it is, we got to. We have all the senses, and through our five senses, we're taking in primarily through what we see, hear, my mind is blank on the third one, but we're taking in that information, and then we turn around, and it's that information that we take in that transforms us from inside out, and we're all being transformed. We're constantly being transformed. So what are we? What are we allowing to come in through that?
And Danny, I would say if you have a lot of if over the years you've been formed into something, then to undo that takes a lot of that transformation. In other words, nothing's going to happen overnight. That is part of that process, right? Of relapse, move forward, relapse, move forward, you know, and then finally get to a point where you really do get fed up with something and move on from it, you know, but it's all part of the process.
The key right there was move. A lot of times we take stuff in, but we don't try to act it. And,
right. It's comfortable.
You know, I've been meditating on the verses, the biblical verses for years about cast all your anxiety on the Lord.
Right.
And a few weeks ago, I started saying, okay, what does that mean? And I don't know if I read something, whatever it's about. Well, practice it. just mentally, verbally practice it. Lord, I don't want to worry about this. I don't want to have anxiety. I'm giving it to you. And I've just been doing that. Kathy came in the other day, walking in the kitchen, said, what are you doing? I said, I'm giving something I'm thinking about the Lord. I'm just giving it to the Lord. So, but you got to start doing something with it and not just take it in. So that move, the move part, right? Sorry, I hijacked what you were saying there. You struck a nerve.
No. Yeah, the point is that you're right. I mean, we all have problems managing our lives at some point, whether it's because something goes on, like in my family right now, where my nephew has cancer and my brother's been diagnosed with a PSP, which is a super high-end brain palsy. That came out, that only happened in the last 6 months. So the fact that you can say, well, I can sit down and manage that is crazy. You're going to go through fear. You're going to go through anxiety. You're going to go through depression. You're going to go through some really bad feelings. And there's nothing wrong with that. People think that bad feelings, and I'm going into a speech, I'm sorry, but people think that going into feelings and anger and upset and depression's bad things. They're actually really good things, because it's kind of like the red flag that something's going on in your soul that you need to deal with. And so the people in recovery used to say, well, I'm so depressed. And I'd say, good. That means you're thinking about it. When you tell me when you weren't depressed, well, when I was drinking a lot. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. So depends how you want to, depends what that feeling is. Feelings come, feelings go. Change is hard. Change is hard.
He started this chapter off somewhere right in the very beginning about feelings and emotions. So any last word from anybody else?
Sorry about taking it.
No, I loved it. That was great.
You did not.
That was great, Herdy. Just very, very quickly, I've said this before, but I had a friend when I worked in Washington, D.C., and unbeknownst to anyone, she didn't do it for, attention. She had the Serenity Prayer printed on a card, like a business size, and just left it on the desk and walked away. Wow. So 30 minutes later, you got people in tears, you got people hugging.
Yeah.
Powerful. Yeah. Because she really cared, and she wasn't trying to, she knew everybody had concerns they weren't expressing. And that kind of brought it, hit a nerve, like Herdy said. Mm-hmm. So they were hurt, and they just needed someone to recognize it, and she did. So it's pretty cool.
BC, Ray, anybody?
Well, to me, what's hard is that I don't sit and worry about things. I just, I got too much to do. I just give it to the Lord, and let's get on to the next thing.
Yeah,
and,
good for you. Yeah.
Sometimes
that's what I like. It's one of the many things I love about you, BC.
That's true. That's true.
That I may be too passive, though.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to dwell on it more, but I just learned to not worry about things I can't control. And
you had a pretty good year last year, and you had a pretty good month.
That's a good habit to have, by the way.
Working out real well.
Yeah.
That's a good habit.
The end of this chapter, I'll close out with this, and he says, after all that's been said and written, being proactive comes down to two things. One, take responsibility for your life. Two, take initiative. It's that simple. Be an agent, not a victim. Don't wait for life to happen to you. Happen to it. By the driver of your life. Be the driver of your life, not just a passenger. I love this right here because it's not natural for us as we grow older. Live out of your imagination, not out of your past. Thank you, guys.
I agree there.
And we'll have a couple more people on here. Last week, Terry Pruitt was traveling this afternoon. And Beth had she's rescheduled. Beth and Terry are friends, and Beth had she had one of her clients moved a meeting on her that she's had scheduled about 6 months. They moved it up 1 hour. So she was going to sit in their parking lot and do this on the phone. then they told her, hey, can you be here in like 5 minutes? And she said, sure. Or she walked in, I guess. So anyway. All right, guys. Appreciate you. All right.
Good to see you all.
See ya.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good to see you, Visa.
Yeah.
Ray, take care.
Right.
Thank
See you later. Bye.